Hello everybody. My presentation will be a bit less multimedia, etc. It will be in boring old style, old school way, just a voice and a paper and reading form. And my presentation holds a title, Noise as Potentiality for Political Artistic Action. But maybe I should readdress it as noise as potentiality also for political artistic action. In this talk I would like to enter the sphere of public space through hearing of public protest as noisy assemblage of different initiatives, a sort of cacophonous event full of voices, gestures, bodies and energies that enter the field of transitoriness before categorizations, formations, unisono voices, fixed ideologies, demands, initiatives and actions. In other words, I would like to grasp or hear particular protests that happened in year 2012 in Slovenia before the moment of their articulation. So I will listen to them as noise. Noise not only as a rapture, a void or noise defined as fixed meaning, but noise as a problematic field that is based on contradiction within itself. And inside this contradiction, for me at least, lies an open field of possibilities. It is convenient also to use noise in the context of this symposium, not only because of its inherent transitory nature, but also with its tight etymologic connection to the sea navy and its form as nausea, which was emphasized by Michel Serres. See not only as the white noise that is produced when waves reach the shore, white noise as pure potentiality because it contains every possible frequency, but also because of its shifting form, non-pattern nature, forming and deforming of waves, crashing into each other, etc. And we are on Cyprus and we have waves in image, don't we? Noise has become a fashionable item to be observed from theory point of view in the last 2 decades. The way I am hearing it now is that destruction and disorder lie in the very center of noise. Its ontological condition is a paradoxical, since noise is always creating structure and dissolving it at the same time. It eats itself in order to constantly re-emerge through flux of data streams, informations and sound. It doesn't have fixed formation or fixed points. It escapes, but at the same time provides meaning. It is multi-layered with constant dislocations. It is confrontational, but at the same time set in the background, filtered through our perception or through legal measures. It can be discomfort or comfort at the same time. But what I here want to suggest is that it is crucially embedded in our culture, although we are doing everything to erase it from our lives or contain it. But in order to start thinking about noise as part of our culture, we have to abolish its confrontational moment through confrontation with silence, which is inherent in noise, listened as background noise, an omnipresent entity. Protest in Slovenia in 2012 at the start didn't really have fixed target. There were so many issues, but targets were many, and in its physical materialization was highly dispersed. In public squares and streets, as Johnny Cash would sing, multitudes were marching and creating noise. It was anti-globalist, anarchists, common people, workers, army veterans, artists, intellectual, fascists, etc. And they were creating dynamic body of voices, sounds, bodies and actions that were totally undifferentiated. If you can control the movements and the bodies on protest with architectural spaces, formation of cups, special forces, corridors and legal rules, you cannot confine noise. It resonates, it bounces, echoes and moves around, entering bodies, creating formation and setting up actions. Which brings us also to the question of tactical use of noise through organization, megaphones, speakers, microphones, mobile technologies, sound devices, acoustic or amplified instruments, mobile and non-mobile sound system, which all enter the ever-shifting sound matter without fixed center or fixed dynamics. Here we can also read in it power relationships, who wants to be heard more, who wants to mobilize more bodies or voices. Of course, also the other side uses sound to control the masses through modern technology, which was devised for the warfare, and it's now available also for commercial usage. There was shouting, booing, whistling, cheering, singing, playing music, performing, each of them mobilizing part of the crowd and then shifting somewhere else, and so resisting immediate articulation. It's tempting to say they operated on the level of affect rather than on the level of reflection. And this is the moment that produced discomfort in general public, in press and by political powers. And thus for me this was the moment and the crucial point. When this noise reaches the point of articulation in the form of unisono voice, movement, demand, political party, it is immediately subsumed in the prevailing political discourse, where it is an easy target for dominant politics and where in order to be hearable and visible has to play by already existing rules of the game. Which is the game of politics that isn't even in the domain of politics anymore, as many would say. When it contains itself, it loses its potentiality and from transitory becomes transitional, with a clear meaning and aim. Noise, of course, is not immune to this process. It is not even immune to become commodity inside the frame of vulgar capitalism. For example, noise in the context of music as musical genre or noise as commodity on the idea market. In the heterogeneous field of academic sound studies in the last 2 decades, in information theory, in urbanism and architecture, through the concepts of soundscape and sonic ecology, in the field of physics and acoustics, and in art through the various practices of sound art. The last context is particularly interesting since noise regarded in the field of contemporary art is always castrated, confined by spaces where it is presented, galleries, museums, even public spaces. It is in strict regulation that prevents it to unleash its potentiality. So, at the end of this presentation, I would like to present 2 works that, for me, sort of resemble the noise as listened in the form of public protest. One by Basque artist Martin. He comes from an art field, but then went more into the musical direction, creating noise music and performing in the field of free improvised music with computer, but using computer only as a sound generating machine through usage of its internal feedback. In the last couple of years he became more concept oriented artist, creating various events, etc. His work is called Improvised Non-Concert, and the other work I would like to present is by Spanish artist Esther Ferrer, called Concert Zai for 30 or 60 voices. This is an older work from the 80s. Both are placed in the context of concert while also trying to subvert it, but both can be also placed in the wider context of social experiment and in the field of participatory art. They both rely on the loose structure of space and time of the performance, and the second one also relies on the score or set of loose instructions. I participated in improvised non-concert at Las Documenta in Kassel. It happened after the discussion amongst invited artists, theoreticians, etc., and general public called Noise and Capitalism. Both discussion and concert expose themselves as not to be goal-concerned or centered in the line of forming a product, but rather as an activity, not as a process, but rather as an activity. In the non-concert, we were put in space and on the certain market begin, without any goal, just the presence of people in certain context and their activities. So some would talk, some would sing, dance, do nothing, some try to provoke others, some try to form a group, certain structure emerged, certain part and vanished, power relations were forming and dissolving. Some performed, some thought they didn't, but in fact they were. He generated noise and posed questions to the act of improvisation as a musical act, as a concert and as a musical act and as a social activity. Improvisation is the key here because it is thought as a music making that takes activity as a starting point rather than focusing on the final product. Moving to Esther Ferrer, she is one of the Spanish pioneers of modern performance in the 70s. She was a member of the collective Zai together with Walter Marchetti and Juan Higaldo, which were closely associated with John Cage and international Fluxus movement. Esther Ferrer in her work continues its basic premises. One of these is that through performance it creates social situation, tensions between the work, the performer and the audience, who become one but heterogeneous body and is characterized by specific social space. It also reveals in the mentioned work concert Zai for 30 to 60 people, which involved about 40 persons. There is a version that is documented on the CD, and it happened in France, I think a couple of years ago. Among these 40 persons were many non-musicians, performers and visitors who are united in one body, the social unit through the medium of voice and sound, followed by an open composition in which voices of different people are entering individually on every minute, one with a completely free content. So the content is not defined and you can sing, speak, yell, shout, etc. and in various languages and in different positions in space. This can be a public space, theater, gallery, or anything else that can produce some artistic and social formation with its own pulse and dynamics. So I think these two works sort of resembles the noise that is generated in public domain in the form of public protest. But the way to read it is not as noise is read in the last couple of years. There are many books, theoretical books on noise appearing these days. But I think the one productive approach would be to listen to noise as an omnipresent entity, not as something that we encounter as sort of unwanted sound or something, but something that is all time all around us and is embedded in the whole social dynamics of the space. And through these metrics, I think we can gain a lot. That's it. Thank you.